Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulullah. Thank you, my brothers and sisters, again for joining me on our talk where we talk about Sirat Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And today we'll be talking about one of the most intense days in the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So the Messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he was sitting in the house of Aisha radiallahu anha in Medina, and this was just after the Battle of Uhud. And he was asked by his wife Aisha radiallahu anha, what was the day of Uhud, the most intense day that you've ever had? And this was after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had finally dedicated his entire being to calling people to the deen of Islam. And he was there defending the truth, and he was resisting the wrongdoers and fighting against the enemies of Islam. And it was all under strange circumstances where Aisha radiallahu anha had asked him this question. Now, it's very important for us to understand and realize that on the day of Uhud was one of the days the Muslims had experienced hardship like they have never experienced before, or harm like they have never experienced before. And Rasulullah ﷺ was saddened by the loss of Hamza, and he would never forget Hamza or forget the Muslims or the defeat and the suffering that was caused on the day of Uhud. But he told Aisha radiallahu anha that he had a more difficult day, or a more intense day. And this day was a lot more troubling than the day of Uhud. And this was the day of Aqaba, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam presented himself to the people of Al-Ta'if. Now, this is where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam began explaining his story in detail to Aisha radiallahu anha. And we listened to the way Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam shed a radiant light on what had happened to him during that time or on that journey, and the mercy and compassion that he had towards the enemies of Islam, where the rest of the people or the rest of the world would have a very different response to the response that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had. Now let's take a trip to Al-Ta'if, which is located around 100 kilometers away from or south of Mecca. And 10 years had passed since Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam began calling people to Islam. And it was now the year 619 AD in the month of Shawwal, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam traveled with his adopted son Zayd ibn Haritha. And this was during the summer period, so Al-Ta'if had their luscious gardens and their flowers, and everything was in full bloom. And he was there to meet, and he was met by the chiefs of Mecca. And one of the greatest tribes in the region was the Banu Thaqif tribe, and they were related to the Banu Quraysh tribe as well. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he decided to travel to Al-Ta'if on foot, not on a horse, not on a carriage, nothing. He was walking there on foot with his adopted son Zayd. Now, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would travel the road, he would visit the people who would live on this road, the different tribes that were living on this road. Every tribe he would visit, he would call them to Islam. Once he would visit this tribe and they will reject him, he will go to another tribe and they will also reject him. And unfortunate for them, they all rejected Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, when he reached to Al-Ta'if, he was met by the three chiefs of Banu Thaqif by the name of Abd al-Yalil, Mas'ud, and Habib. Now, all whom were the son of Amr bin Umayr al-Thaqafi. And this was the chief of the Banu Thaqif tribe. Now, the Messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he stayed there for 10 days. And he would meet with the chiefs, with their chiefs, and he would call them to the doctrine of Tawheed, to the Shahada, to the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the issue is, my brothers and sisters, is that every time they received Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they were discourteous and they were very, very rude to him. Now, when Abu Yalil received him, he said, "Desecrate the holy Kaaba if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really sent you." This was a very rude response to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We know what the Kaaba meant to the people on the Arabian Peninsula, and what it meant to the people of Quraysh, and what it meant especially to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, Mas'ud bin Amr also responded. He said, when he met with him, he said, "Could Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not find anyone other than you to deliver this message?" And he was being very condescending to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And as for Habib, he said, I will never speak to you. If you are really a messenger, it would be more dangerous for me to respond to you. And if you are telling lies about Allah, then I should not speak to you at all. And this was the manner that the people of At-Ta'if received Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, we take a moment to think about the pure heart of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And upon hearing such, hateful responses, and it still wasn't enough for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to waver or to give up on calling these people to the ways of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But he said to them, to the chiefs, in this case, keep the matter that I come to you private between us. That means when he came to call them to the deen, he didn't want the rest of the population or the rest of the people to know. He just wanted to keep it secret between them. But knowing these leaders, the fact that they had this appalling conduct and the way they treated Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they were not noble in any way, shape or form, they decided to spill the beans, as per se, and tell the people about what happened between them and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And at this stage, we see some gangs of people approach Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as he was on his way out of At-Ta'if, when he was ready to leave At-Ta'if, and the people witnessed the violence, the insults, the abuse, the way they would throw rocks and stones, and the way that he had to take refuge away from these people, and he had to run away from these people. And he did this, and he hid in one of the orchards that were there. And him and Zayd ibn Haritha were beaten. That they were thrown with stones and they were thrown with rocks. And Zayd ibn Haritha was covering the body of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he himself was injured, had head injuries, body injuries. And the biographers, they were telling us that how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually collapsed in one of the gardens outside of At-Ta'if. And Zayd ibn Haritha was there with him. So he carried him to a nearby spring where he attempted to wash his wounds. And Zayd ibn Haritha, he tried to remove the sandals of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But we have this lingering image in our mind where the feet of Zayd and the feet of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam were soaked in blood, and they were soaked in blood to the point where the sandals were stuck to the feet of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Zayd failed to take them off. He couldn't take them off because they were stuck. And this all took place close to the garden of Utbah bin Rabah, the chief of the Banu Umayyah tribe. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was close to that garden. It was only some 5 kilometers away from At-Ta'if. This was when they when they left At-Ta'if. And Utbah and his brother, they were on the way back from Mecca, and he had heard what happened to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam at the hands of his aggressors. And even though they were disbelievers, they sympathized with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they also had that bond of kinship, that they were related to each other. So Utbah had a young slave by the name of Addas, and this man was a young Christian man. He was a young Christian slave. So Utbah and Shayba, the brothers, they instructed Addas to take a platter of grapes to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he did so accordingly. And when Addas reached Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he witnessed the demeanor and the manner of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in which he received those grapes, and he said Bismillah, or in the name of Allah, and he consumed those grapes. So Addas knew that the words in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he heard what he said, and he was shocked, because the people of that area, they would not use this, they would not say this term, or they would not have this speech before they eat. They would not remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before they would eat. So he was very taken back by this. So he asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, are you from here? Because what you said is not what these people would usually say. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he asked this slave, and he said, where are you from, and what is your religion? So he replied, I am from Nineveh, and I am Christian. And the Messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said, oh, so you're from the city of the righteous Prophet Yunus alayhi salam. And amazed by this, Adnas said, how do you know about Yunus? And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, I have a very close bond with Yunus, that him and I share this bond of prophethood, and we are both prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Adnas he realized this. He kissed his hand, he kissed his feet, he kissed his forehead, and he on then and there performed his shahada. And he accepted Islam at that point in time, and he did this in front of Utbah and in front of Shaybah. Now the reaction that Rasulullah ﷺ had from the people of Ta'if was very different to the one he expected. And this is where we keep hearing this constant story where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he sent down Jibreel alayhi salam and the angels of the mountains, and he was given the option. Rasulullah ﷺ was given the option, and he wanted permission from Rasulullah ﷺ to close the two mountains that were on either side of Al-Ta'if together, and destroying the city of Al-Ta'if for the disrespect and the humiliation and the way they treated Rasulullah ﷺ. But we look at the character of Rasulullah ﷺ, the mercy and the compassion of Rasulullah ﷺ, and the obvious action that Rasulullah ﷺ took in his dealings with the people, and he decided to show mercy. And the reason why he did this was because he would tell these angels that there might be a time in the future where Muslims will come out of Al-Ta'if. And we come to see this true, where the people of Al-Ta'if accepted Islam right before Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam died. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on him and give him rest. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless the Muslims and the people of that town now for the fact that they have accepted Islam. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the compassion, the mercy and the character of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and most importantly, the patience that he had given Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and we may use that patience to deal with our own struggles at this point in time where we are still stuck in this lockdown. Again, my brothers and sisters, thank you for joining me. I will see you guys on Thursday, inshallah, where we speak about Sirat Rasulullah, where we speak about the series of the Prophets.